Danny Carter was not a hero. He was not a soldier. He was not even particularly brave. He was just a 28-year-old maintenance technician from Cincinnati, Ohio, who had taken a job on a spaceship because it paid well and he wanted to see the stars. The ship was called the Starboard Hope, and it was one of humanity's first long-range exploration vessels. Danny's job was simple. He fixed things that broke. He replaced filters. He cleaned vents. He made sure the toilets worked. It was not glamorous work, but someone had to do it, and Danny was good at it. Today, the Starboard Hope had stopped at a place called Nexus 7. It was a massive space station that floated in neutral territory, far from any planet or star. Thousands of different alien species came here to trade goods, share information, and negotiate treaties. Danny had been to Nexus 7 3 times before, and each time he had stayed on the ship. Space stations made him nervous. There were too many aliens, too many languages, and too many ways to accidentally offend someone and start an intergalactic incident. But today, Captain had given the crew 12 hours of shore leave. Danny's friend Pete had convinced him to come along and see the station's famous observation deck. They had walked through crowded corridors filled with aliens of every shape and size. Some had scales, some had feathers, some looked like walking trees. Danny tried not to stare. Then Pete had spotted a food vendor selling something that smelled like barbecue, and he had run off to investigate. Danny had waited for a few minutes, but Pete did not come back. The crowd had pushed and shifted around him, and somehow Danny had ended up walking down a corridor he did not recognize. The corridor was quieter than the others. The walls were a different color, darker and more polished. There were no vendors here, no tourists, no aliens chatting loudly in strange languages. Danny felt a cold feeling in his stomach. He was somewhere he was not supposed to be. He turned around to go back, but the corridor behind him looked exactly the same as the corridor in front of him. He had no idea which way he had come. His heart started beating faster. He reached for his communication device, but the screen showed no signal. The walls must have been blocking it. Danny picked a direction and started walking. He told himself that he would find someone who could help him. He told himself that everything would be fine. He told himself that he was not lost, just temporarily confused. He turned a corner and stopped. There were 5 of them, 5 alien women standing in a loose formation in the middle of the corridor. They were the tallest beings Danny had ever seen, each one at least 7 feet, maybe more. They wore armor that looked like black glass, polished so smooth that it reflected the light like a mirror. Their skin was pale blue, almost silver in places. Their hair was white as snow, braided in complex patterns and decorated with small metal ornaments. Their eyes were the color of amber, bright and sharp and focused directly on Danny. He knew who they were. Everyone knew who they were. The Empire was one of the oldest and most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. They had conquered dozens of star systems over thousands of years. Their warriors were legendary, feared by every species that had ever encountered them. Stories said that a single soldier could defeat 100 enemies in combat. Stories said that they felt no fear, no mercy, no hesitation. Stories said that they had never lost a war. And now 5 of them were standing in front of Danny Carter, maintenance technician, who had gotten lost looking for his friend Pete. They did not move. They did not speak. They just stared at him with those amber eyes, and Danny felt like a mouse that had accidentally walked into a room full of cats. One of them stepped forward. She was slightly taller than the others, and her armor had gold markings on the shoulders. Her face was angular and severe, with high cheekbones and a strong jaw. A thin scar ran from her left temple to her chin. She looked at Danny the way a scientist might look at an insect. Danny's legs would not move. His mouth was dry. His brain was screaming at him to run, to apologize, to do something, but his body refused to cooperate. The tall warrior placed her hand on the weapon at her hip. It looked like a sword, but the blade was made of some kind of glowing energy that hummed softly in the quiet corridor. "Human," she said, her voice was deep and cold. "You are in a restricted area, explain yourself." Danny tried to speak, but only a small squeaking sound came out. He cleared his throat and tried again. "I'm sorry," he said. "I got lost. I was looking for my friend. I didn't mean to come here. I'll leave right now. I'm very sorry." The other warriors moved closer. They formed a half-circle around him, blocking any chance of escape. Danny could smell something like metal and flowers, a strange combination that he would remember for the rest of his life. "Lost," the tall warrior repeated. She did not sound like she believed him. "Humans are not permitted in this section. This is the diplomatic wing. We are here for important negotiations with the Galactic Council." "I understand," Danny said quickly. "I really am sorry. I'll go. Just point me in the right direction and I'll go right now." The warrior studied him for a long moment. Danny felt sweat running down his back. He was certain that these would be the last few seconds of his life. He thought about his mother back on Earth. He thought about how she had cried when he left for space. He thought about how he had promised her he would be careful. The tall warrior turned to the others and said something in a language Danny did not understand. It sounded like music, but sharp and dangerous, like a knife hidden in a song. Danny stood there, waiting, trembling, completely helpless. He had never felt so small in his entire life. These women were not just tall. They were powerful in a way that went beyond physical size. They carried themselves like they owned the universe, like they had never met anything they could not defeat. And that was when Danny Carter, maintenance technician from Cincinnati, Ohio, did something that would change the course of galactic history. He looked at them, all five of them with their silver hair and amber eyes and black glass armor, and his brain, overwhelmed by fear and confusion, and something else he could not name, simply gave up trying to be careful. "Wow," he said, the word escaping his mouth before he could stop it. "You're all absolutely gorgeous." The corridor went silent. Every single warrior froze. And Danny Carter realized with growing horror that he had just said something very, very strange to the most dangerous women in the galaxy. The silence lasted for 5 heartbeats. Danny counted them because his heart was pounding so hard that each beat felt like a drum inside his chest. The tall warrior with the gold markings on her armor had stopped moving completely. Her hand was still on her weapon, but she was not drawing it. She was just standing there, staring at Danny with an expression he could not understand. It was not anger. It was not confusion. It was something else, something that looked almost like shock. The warrior beside her, a slightly shorter woman with a deep scar across her nose and 3 metal rings braided into her white hair, had taken a step backward. Her amber eyes were wide, wider than Danny had thought possible. The youngest-looking warrior, standing at the back of the group, had turned a strange color. Her pale blue skin had darkened to a deep violet shade, spreading from her cheeks down to her neck. Danny did not know what that meant, but he guessed it was some kind of blush. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The humming of the energy weapons was the only sound in the corridor. Danny's brain finally caught up with his mouth, and he felt a wave of pure terror wash over him. What had he just said? Had he insulted them? Was calling a warrior gorgeous some kind of grave offense? Were they going to kill him now? Were they going to kill him slowly? "I'm sorry," he said quickly, his voice shaking. "I didn't mean to offend you. I don't know why I said that. I was scared and it just came out. Please don't kill me." The tall warrior blinked. It was a slow blink, deliberate, like she was trying to process something that did not make sense. "What did you say?" she asked. Her voice was different now. The coldness was still there, but underneath it was something else. Uncertainty. Danny swallowed hard. "I said I was sorry. I didn't mean to." "No," the warrior interrupted. "Before that, what did you call us?" Danny hesitated. His survival instincts were screaming at him to lie, to make something up, to claim he had said nothing at all. But these were warriors. They had probably spent their entire lives learning how to detect lies. If he lied now, they would know, and then they definitely would kill him. "I said you were gorgeous," Danny admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Beautiful. I said you were all beautiful." The violet color on the young warrior's face deepened. The warrior made a small sound, something between a gasp and a cough. The tall warrior's hand finally dropped away from her weapon. "Beautiful," she repeated, like she was tasting an unfamiliar word. "You think we are beautiful." Danny nodded slowly. He did not trust himself to speak again. Every word that came out of his mouth seemed to make the situation stranger. The tall warrior turned to face the others. She said something in their language, something fast and complicated. The warrior responded, her voice sharp with disbelief. The young warrior said nothing at all. She just stood there, her violet blush spreading all the way to her ears. Danny watched this exchange with growing confusion. He had expected to die. He had expected violence and anger and cold efficiency. He had not expected this, whatever this was. The tall warrior turned back to him. She took a step closer, and Danny had to fight the urge to run. Up close, she was even more impressive. Her amber eyes seemed to glow with their own inner light. Her face was like something carved from stone, sharp and perfect and utterly serious. "Human," she said, "I am High Commander of the Third Fleet. I have led armies across 100 worlds. I have killed more enemies than you have met people in your entire life. I have never retreated from battle. I have never shown weakness. I have never failed in my duty." Danny nodded again, not sure where this was going. "In all my years," continued, "no one has ever called me beautiful." She said the word like it was foreign, like she was speaking a language she had only just learned. There was something in her voice that Danny had not expected to hear, something that sounded almost like vulnerability. "That cannot be true," Danny said before he could stop himself. "Look at you, look at all of you, you're amazing." The warrior made that coughing sound again. Danny was starting to think it might be laughter. His expression shifted. For just a moment, so brief that Danny almost missed it, something softened in her face. Then it was gone, replaced by the cold warrior mask. "You are either very brave or very foolish, human," she said. "Perhaps both." "Mostly foolish," Danny admitted. "My friend Pete would agree." This time, the sound from the warrior was definitely laughter. It was a rough sound, unused and rusty, like a machine that had not been turned on in years. Looked at her companion with something like surprise. Then she looked back at Danny, studying him with those bright amber eyes. "What is your name, human?" Danny Carter. I'm a maintenance technician on the Starward Hope. I fix things. Broken pipes, faulty wiring, that kind of stuff." A worker said, "Not a soldier, not a diplomat." "No, ma'am. Just a guy who got lost looking for his friend." Nodded slowly. She turned to the young warrior, the one with the violet blush. She said, "What do you think of this human?" His blush somehow deepened even further. She looked at Danny, then quickly looked away. "He is strange," she said. Her voice was softer than the others, younger, "but he does not seem dangerous." "He called us gorgeous," said. "In the middle of a restricted corridor, surrounded by armed warriors, he called us gorgeous." "Yes, High Commander." "And he meant it." Eyes returned to Danny. "You meant it, didn't you, Danny Carter?" Danny thought about lying. He thought about playing it safe. But something told him that would know the difference. "Yes," he said. "I meant it. I know it was probably a stupid thing to say, and I know you could kill me without breaking a sweat, and I know I'm just a maintenance technician who shouldn't even be here. But yes, I meant it. You're the most beautiful women I've ever seen." The corridor was silent again, but it was a different kind of silence now. Not threatening, not dangerous, just quiet. Looked at her warriors. Something passed between them, some kind of unspoken communication that Danny could not understand. "You will come with us," said finally. Danny's heart sank. "Am I under arrest?" "No," turned and began walking down the corridor. You are going to explain something to us, something we do not understand." Danny stood there for a moment, confused. The warrior, the one who had laughed, walked past him and gave him a light push on the shoulder. "Move, human," she said, but there was no threat in her voice. If anything, she sounded curious. Danny moved. He followed down the corridor, surrounded by warriors, walking deeper into the restricted diplomatic wing. He had no idea what was about to happen, but for the first time since he had gotten lost, he thought that maybe, just maybe, he was not going to die today. The room they brought Danny to was large and impressive. The walls were made of the same dark polished material as the corridor, but here there were decorations. Banners hung from the ceiling, each one showing symbols and images that Danny did not recognize. Weapons were displayed on stands, swords and spears and things that looked like they could cut through steel like butter. There was a long table in the center of the room, surrounded by chairs that were clearly designed for people much taller than Danny. More warriors stood around the room, at least a dozen of them. They all turned to look when entered with Danny following behind her. Their amber eyes tracked him like predators watching prey. "High Commander," one of them said, stepping forward. "Why have you brought a human here? This is a restricted diplomatic area." "I am aware," replied. She gestured for Danny to stand beside the table. "This human has said something that requires explanation." The warrior called was the one with the scar across her nose. Up close, Danny could see that her face was covered in small marks and lines, evidence of countless battles. She looked at Danny with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity. "What did he say?" Paused. For a moment she looked almost uncomfortable. "He called us gorgeous." The room went very still. Every warrior turned to stare at Danny. He felt like a bug under a magnifying glass. "He called us what?" asked. "Gorgeous, beautiful. He said we were the most beautiful women he had ever seen." A murmur ran through the room. Warriors exchanged glances. Some of them looked confused. Others looked disturbed. A few looked at Danny with expressions he could not read at all. "That is unusual," said slowly. "Yes," turned to Danny. "You will explain, human. Why did you say this? What did you mean?" Danny took a deep breath. He was surrounded by the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy, and they wanted him to explain why he had called them pretty. This was not how he had expected his day to go. "I meant exactly what I said," he told them. "You're beautiful, all of you. I looked at you and that was my first thought. Not fear, not danger, just beauty." "But we are warriors," said. She sounded genuinely confused. "We are killers. We have spent our entire lives learning how to destroy our enemies. How can you look at us and see beauty?" Danny thought about this for a moment. "Where I come from, being strong doesn't mean you can't be beautiful. My grandmother was one of the toughest people I ever knew. She raised 5 children on her own, worked 2 jobs, and once chased a burglar out of her house with a frying pan. And she was beautiful. My mother told me that every day." The warriors were silent, listening. "Beauty isn't just about being soft or gentle," Danny continued. "It's about being impressive, being remarkable. When I look at you, I see women who have dedicated their lives to something. I see strength and skill and power. And yes, I see beauty." Studied him for a long moment. "In our culture, we do not speak of such things. We do not comment on appearance. We are judged only by our achievements in battle. From the day we are born, we are trained to fight, to kill, to conquer. Nothing else matters." "No one has ever told you that you're beautiful?" Danny asked. "Never." His voice was flat, but there was something underneath it, something raw. "We are weapons. That is what we are told. That is what we believe. Weapons are not beautiful. Weapons are useful." Danny felt something twist in his chest. He thought about growing up with his mother and his grandmother, surrounded by love and praise and encouragement. He thought about his first girlfriend telling him he had nice eyes. He thought about his friends joking around, throwing compliments at each other like they were nothing. "That's terrible," he said quietly. "I'm sorry." His eyes widened. You are sorry for us. Yes, everyone deserves to be told they're beautiful at least once. The room was silent again. Danny saw expressions shifting on the warriors' faces. Confusion was giving way to something else, something that looked almost like wonder. Before anyone could speak again, the door at the far end of the room opened. A human woman walked in, flanked by two station security officers. She was wearing the formal uniform of the Earth Diplomatic Corps, and her face was a mixture of worry and relief. "Danny Carter," she asked, hurrying toward him. "Thank goodness, your captain has been looking everywhere for you. Are you all right? Are you in trouble?" "I don't know," Danny admitted. "Am I in trouble?" The woman looked then at the other warriors, then back at Danny. "I'm Amy, Junior Diplomatic Liaison. I was assigned to help with the negotiations. What happened here?" Stepped forward. "Your human entered our area by accident. He was lost. When we confronted him, he said something we did not expect. He called us beautiful." Amy's eyebrows rose. "He called you beautiful?" "Yes, and he meant it." Amy looked at Danny. "You called the warriors beautiful." Danny shrugged helplessly. It just came out. To his surprise, Amy started to smile. It was a small smile, but it was real. "High Commander," she said, turning to, "I think I understand your confusion. Humans express admiration very differently than we compliment each other on appearance regularly. It's a way of showing respect and building connections." "Connections," repeated. "Yes. When Danny called you beautiful, he wasn't being disrespectful. He was being very human. He saw something impressive and he said so. That's how we are." Looked at her warriors, then back at Amy. "This is common among your species." "Very common. We tell our friends they look nice. We tell our family members we love them. We tell strangers we like their clothes. It might seem strange to you, but for us, it's normal." The young warrior stepped forward. The violet color had faded from her face, but her eyes were bright with interest. "So humans say these things to everyone. You tell each other you are beautiful." "All the time," Danny said. "My mom tells me I'm handsome every time we talk. My friend Pete told me my new jacket looked good last week. It's just what we do." Looked at, "High Commander, I have read about human customs, but I never knew about this. It is remarkable." Nodded slowly. "To spend your entire life hearing that you are valued, not just for what you can do, but for who you are. That is something we have never experienced." Danny looked around at these powerful warriors, these women who had conquered star systems and defeated armies, and for the first time, he saw something beyond the strength and the danger. He saw loneliness. "Well," he said, "maybe that's something we can change, starting right now." Tilted her head. "What do you mean?" Danny smiled. "I mean, High Commander, that your armor is incredible. It makes you look like something out of a dream. And those scars tell a story, and it's a story of survival, and that's beautiful. And you have the kindest eyes I've seen since I left Earth." The room was silent for a long moment. Then slowly, one by one, the warriors began to smile. It was small, it was hesitant, but it was real. And Danny Carter, maintenance technician from Cincinnati, Ohio, realized that he had just started something that no one, not even him, could have predicted. 3 days passed on Nexus 7, and Danny Carter became the most popular human on the station. It started small. After that first meeting, had asked him to stay for the rest of the day to answer more questions about human customs. Amy had contacted Captain, who was confused but agreed to let Danny remain as long as the requested his presence. The diplomatic team hoped that this strange connection might help with the ongoing negotiations. They had no idea how right they were. Word spread quickly among the delegation. The human who had called the High Commander beautiful. The human who saw warriors as more than weapons. By the second day, warriors who had spent their entire lives inspiring fear were approaching Danny with something like shyness. A veteran named who had fought in 17 major campaigns asked Danny what he thought of her war braids. He told her they were elegant and showed incredible patience and skill. She had stood there for a full minute, processing his words, before nodding once and walking away. Later, Amy told Danny that had not stopped talking about the compliment all evening. A young warrior named showed Danny a small scar on her hand, the first wound she had ever received in combat. He told her it was proof that she was brave enough to face danger and strong enough to survive it. Had turned that deep violet color and mumbled something that sounded like thank you. Even the second-in-command, who seemed harder than stone, found moments to stand near Danny and listen as he talked about human culture. She never asked for compliments directly, but Danny made sure to give them anyway. He told her that her voice was commanding and confident. He told her that her eyes were sharp and intelligent. Each time, she would grunt and look away, but Danny noticed that she kept coming back for more. The negotiations with the Galactic Council were supposed to be tense and difficult. Instead, they became almost friendly. The delegates who met with council representatives were calmer, more open, more willing to compromise. Council members reported that the fearsome warriors seemed different somehow, though they could not explain exactly how. Only Danny and Amy knew the truth. They were learning something new. They were learning that they could be seen as more than instruments of destruction, and that knowledge was changing them in ways that no one could have predicted. But not everyone was happy about this development. The collective was a group of species who had been enemies of for centuries. They had hoped that the negotiations would fail. They wanted them to remain isolated and aggressive, too busy fighting border wars to notice the expanding into neighboring territories. A peaceful empire was a threat to their plans. On the third night, Danny was sitting in a small common area near the diplomatic wing. He had just finished dinner with Pete, who was still confused about everything that had happened but was enjoying the extra attention from curious aliens who wanted to meet Danny's friends. Pete had gone back to the ship, and Danny was enjoying a quiet moment alone when he heard voices coming from around a corner. He would not have paid attention, except that he heard the word spoken in a harsh whisper. Danny crept closer, staying in the shadows. Two figures were standing in a dark alcove, speaking in low voices. One was tall and thin, with gray skin and 4 arms. The other was shorter and covered in green scales. Danny recognized them as from the markings on their clothes. "The plan is ready," the tall one was saying. "We strike tonight during the final ceremony. And the humans, they will be blamed. We have planted evidence. They will believe that humans tried to assassinate their high commander. The alliance will be destroyed before it begins." Danny's blood went cold. They were planning to kill. They were planning to frame humanity for murder. He wanted to run. Every instinct told him to get away, to find security, to let someone else handle this. But there was no time. The ceremony was in less than an hour. If he left now to find help, it might be too late. Danny made a decision. It was probably foolish. It was definitely dangerous. But he thought about and all the warriors who had shown him their hidden softness. He could not let them die. He followed them at a safe distance. They moved through the station's back corridors, areas that were normally empty. Danny stayed quiet, using every bit of stealth he had learned from sneaking around the Starboard Hope's engine room during late-night shifts. They entered a maintenance room. Danny waited outside, listening. He heard them discussing weapons and timing and escape routes. His hands were shaking. This was real. This was actually happening. He pulled out his communication device. The signal was weak here, but he managed to send a short message to Amy. 2 words: attack. Then he heard footsteps inside the room, moving toward the door. Danny ran. He ran as fast as he could toward the diplomatic wing. His lungs burned. His legs ached. He had never been athletic, never been a runner, but fear gave him speed he did not know he had. He burst into the corridor outside the ceremony hall just as the doors opened. Warriors were streaming out within the center. She saw Danny and frowned. "Danny Carter, what is?" "Get down," Danny screamed. The word had barely left his mouth when the first shot came. A bolt of energy sizzled through the air, aimed directly at its head. But Danny had already moved. He threw himself at the High Commander, knocking her aside just as the bolt passed through the space where she had been standing. The corridor erupted into chaos. More shots came from the shadows. Warriors drew their weapons and formed a protective circle around. Danny lay on the ground, gasping for breath, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. Moved like lightning, she spotted the attackers hiding in an alcove and charged toward them. Her energy blade hummed as she cut through the air. Other warriors followed, moving with the deadly precision that had made them legends throughout the galaxy. But they had brought more assassins than expected. They poured out of hidden doorways, at least 20 of them, all armed with weapons designed to penetrate armor. Danny watched in horror as the battle unfolded. There were incredible fighters, but they were outnumbered and caught off guard. He saw take a glancing hit to her shoulder. He saw fighting 3 enemies at once. And then he heard a sound that gave him hope, human voices. Captain and a squad of crew members from the Starboard Hope came running down the corridor. Amy must have received his message and raised the alarm. The humans were not warriors, but they were armed with standard security weapons, and they did not hesitate to join the fight. "For humanity," Captain shouted, "protect the—" Danny had never been prouder to be human. The battle lasted only a few more minutes. Between the warriors and the human reinforcements, the assassins were quickly overwhelmed. Some were killed, others were captured. The threat was over. Danny lay on the cold floor, breathing hard, covered in dust and sweat. He had never been so scared in his life. He had never felt so alive. A shadow fell over him. He looked up and saw standing there, looking down at him with those amber eyes. "You saved my life," she said. "You saw the danger and you warned us. You pushed me out of the way." Danny managed a weak smile. Seemed like the right thing to do. Reached down and offered her hand. Danny took it, and she pulled him to his feet with effortless strength. "You are no warrior, Danny Carter. You have no armor, no weapons, no training. And yet you ran toward danger instead of away from it." "I couldn't let them hurt you," Danny said. "Any of you." Looked at him for a long moment. Then she did something that shocked every in the corridor. She bowed. The High Commander of the Third Fleet, one of the most powerful warriors in the galaxy, bowed to a human maintenance technician. "You have proven yourself this day," she said. "You are no longer just a friend to you are a hero." Danny did not know what to say. So he just stood there, surrounded by warriors and friends, and tried not to cry. The Great Hall of Nexus 7 was filled with representatives from 100 different species. They sat in tiered rows that rose toward a ceiling made of transparent crystal, showing the endless stars beyond. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, where decisions that affected billions of lives were made. Danny Carter stood at the edge of the human delegation, wearing a borrowed formal uniform that did not quite fit. Pete stood beside him, still amazed by everything that had happened. Captain was there too, along with Amy and other members of the diplomatic team. They had all been invited to witness something historic. The collective had been exposed. Evidence recovered from the captured assassins proved that they had planned the attack on. They had intended to blame humanity and destroy any chance of peace between humans and, instead, their plot had brought the two species closer together than anyone could have imagined. The representatives sat in their section of the hall, surrounded by council security officers. Their gray and green faces showed no emotion, but Danny could sense their defeat. Their plans had failed completely. High Commander walked to the center of the hall. Her black glass armor gleamed under the lights. Her white hair was braided with new ornaments, including one that Danny recognized as a symbol of gratitude in culture. She moved with the confidence of a warrior who had never known fear, But there was something different about her now, something softer around the edges. "Representatives of the Galactic Council," she began, her voice carrying to every corner of the massive room. "I stand before you today to announce a change in policy, a significant change." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. They were known for their stubbornness, their refusal to compromise. Any change in their policy was major news. "For 10,000 years," continued, "the Empire has stood alone. We have conquered, we have fought, we have proven ourselves the greatest warriors in the galaxy. We have been feared by all who know our name, and we have been proud of that fear." She paused, her amber eyes scanning the crowd until they found Danny. "But recently, we have learned something new, something unexpected. We have learned that there is more to existence than strength and conquest. We have learned that there is value in kindness, in connection, in seeing others not as enemies or tools, but as beings worthy of admiration." The hall was silent. Every representative leaned forward, waiting. "Humanity taught us this," said, "not through force or diplomacy, but through simple honesty. A single human, a maintenance technician named Danny Carter, looked at us and saw something no one else had ever seen. He saw beauty." Danny felt his face grow hot as hundreds of alien eyes turned toward him. Pete grabbed his arm and grinned. "For our entire lives, we have been told that we are weapons, instruments of destruction. We believed that this was all we could be. We never imagined that someone might look at us and see something worthy of admiration beyond our ability to kill." His voice grew stronger. But Danny Carter did. He saw us, truly saw us, and he was not afraid to speak. He called us gorgeous. He called us beautiful. And in doing so, he gave us a gift more valuable than any victory in battle. He gave us the knowledge that we are more than our purpose. Tears were forming in Danny's eyes. He blinked them away. "When they tried to destroy this new understanding, when they sent assassins to kill me and blame humanity, it was Danny Carter who discovered their plot. It was Danny Carter who ran through the station to warn us. It was Danny Carter who pushed me out of the path of an energy bolt that would have killed me. A maintenance technician, with no weapons and no training, risked his life to save mine." Turned to face the human delegation directly. "This is what humanity has shown us. That strength comes in many forms. That bravery is not limited to warriors. That the smallest act of kindness can change the course of history." She raised her hand, and the warriors in the hall rose to their feet as one. "Therefore, I, High Commander of the Third Fleet, speaking with the full authority of the Council of War, announce that the Empire will not merely sign a non-aggression treaty with humanity. We will pursue a full military and cultural alliance. Humanity will be our partners, our friends, and our teachers." The hall erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions. Diplomats rushed to consult with their colleagues. This was unprecedented. They had never allied with anyone. They had always stood alone. Captain grabbed Danny's shoulder. "Do you understand what you've done? This changes everything. An alliance makes humanity one of the most protected species in the galaxy." Danny shook his head in disbelief. "I just told them they were pretty." Pete laughed. Apparently that was enough. When the noise finally died down, a representative from the council stood to address. "High Commander, this is remarkable news. But I must ask, why? Why would the mighty choose to ally with a species so much younger and weaker than themselves?" Smiled. It was a small smile, but it transformed her entire face. For a moment, she did not look like a terrifying warrior. She looked like a woman who had discovered something wonderful. "Because humanity sees us as we wish to be seen, not as monsters, not as weapons, but as beings capable of beauty and grace. For 10,000 years, the galaxy has looked upon us with fear. Humans are the first to look upon us and see something worth admiring." She turned once more toward Danny. "The human who called us gorgeous did not cower or lie. He simply spoke the truth as he saw it. And in doing so, he reminded us of something we had forgotten. We are more than our armor. We are more than our blades. We are more than the enemies we have defeated. We are women, and we are beautiful." The warriors in the hall raised their fists in salute. The sound echoed off the walls like thunder. Danny stood there, overwhelmed, as the most powerful warriors in the galaxy honored him. A maintenance technician from Cincinnati, Ohio, who had gotten lost looking for his friend Pete. After the ceremony, found him standing alone near a window, looking out at the stars. "Danny Carter," she said, standing beside him, "you have changed the course of galactic history. How does that feel?" Danny thought about it for a moment. "Honestly, it feels weird. I didn't do anything special. I just said what I was thinking." And that is exactly what made it special. Looked out at the stars. In our culture, we hide our thoughts. We show only strength. We never reveal weakness or uncertainty. But you spoke without hesitation. You showed us that honesty can be its own kind of courage. "I was terrified," Danny admitted. "When I first saw you, I thought I was going to die. And yet you still called us beautiful." Danny laughed softly. "My brain kind of gave up at that point. It just said what it was thinking." Nodded. "Perhaps that is what the galaxy needs. More beings who say what they are thinking, even when they are afraid." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the stars drift past. "What will you do now?" asked. Danny shrugged. "Go back to fixing pipes, I guess. That's what I'm good at." "You are good at more than that, Danny Carter. You are good at seeing people as they truly are. That is a rare gift." "Maybe," Danny smiled. "But the toilets on the Starward Hope aren't going to fix themselves." Made a sound that might have been a laugh. "If you ever wish to leave that life behind, there is a place for you in the Empire. We could use someone who reminds us that we are more than weapons." Danny looked at her, this powerful warrior who had become something like a friend. "I'll think about it. But for now, I think I need to go find Pete. He's probably gotten lost somewhere, wondering where I am." Nodded. "Go then, Danny Carter. Go find your friend. And know that wherever you travel in this galaxy, you will always have allies among the, because you were the first to call us beautiful, and we will never forget." Danny walked away, back toward the ship, back toward his simple life of fixing broken things. But as he walked, he smiled, because he knew that the galaxy was a little different now, a little kinder, a little more connected. All because a scared maintenance technician from Cincinnati, Ohio, had looked at 5 terrifying alien warriors and said the first thing that came to his mind. They were gorgeous, and that had changed everything.